Just before I get to my first panel tonight, Caroline Marcus and Cam Redden, the big nuclear announcement we just were talking about there and talking about all day, we all need to remember a key point here. This idea of 7 sites Australia-wide is going to be taken to you, to the Australian people, to the voters. This will be front and centre at a federal election, either late this year or early next year. If the opposition were to win that election, then the state Labor premiers would find themselves in a very difficult position. Jacinta Allen, Chris Minns, Peter Malinauskas and Roger Cook in WA will all still be in their jobs after that next federal election. But just as with 60% of Australians voting no on The Voice, would these premiers ignore the will of the majority of the Australian people on having nuclear power plants in their states? The premiers were singing from the same hymn book today when asked their views. Here they are.
Look, our ban stays in place. We're not repealing it.
I am fine with nuclear power as long as it doesn't make electricity bills more expensive. And what we know from report after report is that in the Australian context, it will make power more expensive.
Nuclear energy is toxic, it's risky, it's more expensive, and it is decades and decades away.
Can you believe Jacinta Allen, the Premier of Victoria, calling modern nuclear power toxic? She sounds like a Green-supporting university student. But then we have weak-kneed Liberals like the hapless John Pasuto, who's the opposition leader in Victoria, who's unelectable, by the way, saying he doesn't support nuclear. I've got a bit of news on that a bit later, by the way. That won't matter because he'll never be Premier of Victoria. But more worryingly, LNP Queensland leader, the man who will likely lead Queensland after the next state election, David Crisafulli, says he doesn't support it either. It does give Dutton a clear picture of the difficult road ahead, I guess. But if he were to win a federal election with this nuclear policy front and centre, it would be very hard for state premiers to look the other way. And just before we talk to Caroline and Cam, I couldn't stop laughing when Energy Minister Chris Bowen bobbed up for a media conference later today to respond to Peter Dutton. Virtually no one from the media turned up. I think his staff were probably in the back of the room asking questions. He was asked a couple and then he scurried off.
I didn't come up with this fantasy. He did. You'll have to ask him. All right. Thank you.
What a joke he is. We've got a long way to go on all of this.